If it concerns the mental fluidal energies, then everything runs via the subconsciousness, which has its distance limitations, whereby the greatest distance is approximately 3 light seconds, or about 900,000 kilometers, for a connection to still be produced. If, however, it concerns the fluidal energies of the spiritual consciousness, then these distances can be unlimited. In a cemetery, it is possible that an obscure form appears, if through the new personality of an earlier deceased person, a back connection is created, whereby a shadowy manifestation can appear. If a living person stays at a cemetery, under certain circumstances, mental fluidal energies can become active and appear in shadowy form, but this is conditional that the mental fluidal energies are very strongly active and are brought into manifestation by a living human being. This is conditional that the mental swinging waves of the earlier personality are very strongly deposited in the skeleton, whereby through the new personality of the same personality lineage, via the subconsciousness, the old deposited mental fluidal energies and their powers are activated and brought into manifestation. At the same time, it must be considered that mental fluidal energies of the deceased person can only be perceived if such an appearance actually arises. The body is usually too deeply buried for the deposited mental fluidal powers in a skeleton to reach to the surface or penetrate through the soil in order to be perceived by a living person. Mental fluidal powers cannot disturb each other because each mental fluidal energy exhibits its own frequency. Consequently, the frequency-based protection shield of the mental fluidal powers are maintained against each other, just as in the life. The mental fluidal powers are centered in the skeleton, whereas on the other hand, these fluidal powers have no great radiations from the body or from the skeleton. Consequently, they can hardly come into conflict with other bodies. Solace can be found at a grave or in the house where the loved one lived. However, that is not contingent upon the deposited mental fluidal energies of the deceased at the cemetery nor in the house, but in the thoughts and feelings of the human being who visited the grave or resides at the house, and thereby they develop consoling powers, thoughts, and feelings, because they create a fine-feeling connection via the thoughts and feelings to the deceased human being. Through their own thoughts and most fine feelings, a connection is felt with the deceased person. It is actually so that too frequent and too intensive cleaning of the body cleanses away or simply impairs the deposited mental fluidal powers on the surface area of the body. However, not only that, but it has been proven the immunity gets weakened because the pores are depleted. This only happens when chemical or other cleaning methods are applied. Therefore, it is advisable to shower with the application of special chemical cleaning methods only as much as is necessary for the cleanliness of the body. Unfortunately, as a rule, showers and baths using damaging cleaning methods are greatly overdone, whereby many human beings are vulnerable to sicknesses other than if, quite reasonably, showers and baths are taken only when actually appropriate. Moreover, if chemical cleaning methods are used in baths and showers, then the health can be quite damaged, especially in regards to allergies. However, to clean oneself in a shower or to body wash with pure water is harmless. Two different swinging wave spheres are concerned. The mental fluidal power also deposits itself into the aura and is perceivable in a fine-feeling manner, whereby, however, it cannot be seen. Also, the aura, under certain circumstances, can be perceived in a fine-feeling manner. However, it cannot be seen, and just like the personality swinging waves, the aura also triggers sympathy or antipathy, affection or repulsion, because deposited in the aura are indeed also mental, personality-based, and character-based fluids. According to the evolution of the human being, the wider the aura encompasses their body, the faster and more differentiated other swinging waves are perceived. The aura is the coat which flows through the life form and arises around them, as it were, as a spiritual consciousness-based bodily product, which continuously flows through the spirit form and the body with light speed, and also stands in connection with the cosmic electromagnetic life energy from which both the spirit form and also the body live. This life energy converts itself through the inner vason as well as through the personality, swinging waves, etc., into aura energy and fluidal energy, virtually as a radiation of the spiritual and material body. The human being receives swinging waves and powers from the entire universe, especially the so-called cosmic electromagnetic life energy. This cosmic electromagnetic life energy has a quite fine bluish color, which the human being, under certain circumstances, is able to see. It is this, the actual life energy, which the human body as well as the spirit form receives and processes, and from which the human being truly lives. However, this energy, which penetrates into the body, transforms itself and yields byproducts. These byproducts, in turn, exist of various energy forms, as for example, as a most important point, the mental fluidal power, the personal mental fluidal form, which mentally characterizes every individual human being. It is this same energy which, for example, establishes itself into an object which is carried by the human being over a long time, and which this object provides the personal of the mental of the concerned human being. This stored mental fluidal power in this object can become perceived from fellow human beings as radiations, a fact which already many have found when they touch any object of another person or have taken it into their hand. This radiation represents something foreign or something familiar to the human being, depending on whether the concerned human being is connected to the other human being to whom the object simply belongs to or had belonged to. Just as objects store the fluidal powers of the human being, thus the clothing that one wears also stores these mental fluidal powers. Fully soaked with these, they build a hampering armor around the body, which is why through them neither the escaping mental fluidal powers of the body can reach out with full power into the open air, nor is the cosmic electromagnetic life energy able to penetrate in complete strength into the body of the human being. The thicker the clothing of the human being is, the more these fluidal powers become absorbed. The human being can notice that when one goes swimming out in the open and only wears a small bathing suit, their body is very much freer and guarantees a much better energy exchange than if they are completely dressed. The full and natural exchange of the penetrating power as well as the mental fluidal powers from out of the body can then first take place quite normally, naturally, and unhindered when the body is without clothing. This therefore means that when a human being conducts their meditation or meditative practice, they have to totally discard their clothing and to dispose their clothing somewhere outside of their meditation space. As a rule, the room next to the actual meditation space is suitable, where the meditation person can unclothe and dress again. What applies to clothing also applies to jewelry, watches, etc., if these are not of pure gemstones or of precious metals. The truth is namely that the strongest deposits of mental swinging waves, with their energies and powers, so therefore the mental fluidal powers, primarily and extremely strongly deposit themselves in the entire body, and therefore in its organs as well as in the skeleton. All mental fluidal powers store themselves as fixed and lasting information property in all body cells. For this reason, it is to be noted that the information of the mental block is deposited in a matter of seconds into the body organs and into the entire cell system, whereby an organized memory and a cellular memory occurs, that then becomes effective in regard to the transferring of the stored mental cell information from one human being to another when transplants are performed, respectively, when a human being gets implanted an organ from another human being. Therefore, if an organ or a bone is obtained from a human being, living or dead, and is implanted into another living human being, then this brings about unpleasant consequences. Namely, the transplanted organ, its mental swinging waves, energy, power, and information of the entire body are even transferred over into the brain and consciousness of the human being which had the bone or organ transplant. This means that also idiosyncrasies, wishes, hopes, fears, and joys, as well as behaviors, get transferred. This lets itself then be recognized in a manner that the person which becomes implanted with a foreign organ sooner or later inevitably takes on quirks and behaviors, and even the manner of thinking, etc., of the human being which functioned as an organ donor or bone donor. Naturally, not all organs and cells are equally powerful in regard to the storage of mental information. Consequently, great differences exist. The strongest organ regarding the storage of mental swinging waves, energies, powers, and information is the heart, after which then follows all various important life organs. Implanted organs and bones call forth, in each case, any smaller or greater changes in the organ receiver, whereby in the worst case, crass personality changes emerge in the form that the organ receiver takes on the personality-wise of the organ-donating person. Therefore, it is possible, for example, that a human being which received the heart of a murderer under circumstances becomes a murderer themselves. These are facts which today, by the medical doctors, still become contested. Nevertheless, the time will prove that it is really so, and that this is no abnormal or esoteric theory and not nonsense.